All right, welcome everyone. I gotta fix a microphone that just started to fall over a little bit. Yeah, get that back in a good place. Sorry if it's a little noisy. I think that will be a little better. Sorry for the sound. Microphone was getting away from me. Welcome everyone to another MandoLessons Live. These happen on lots of Saturdays, not everyone, but most, at noon Eastern Standard Time. If you're new here, I'm seeing lots of familiar faces already, but if you're new here, the idea is I love hearing what everyone's working on. If anyone has questions for me, I'm happy to do my best to answer them. I'll play tune requests if they're not under copyright. And yeah, just generally have a good time. Kick back with some other mandolin players. Looks like we got tons of people already over 50, which is great. We have Little Falls, Minnesota, Lynchburg, Tennessee, Indiana, Tel Aviv, Plymouth, UK, Michigan, Idaho, Ireland, Scotland, New York, County Cork, Ireland, New York, County Cork, that's a nice rhyme, Oklahoma, Netherlands, Scotland, Catskills, Ontario, etc. And yeah, so I love playing tunes. Chris Malice says, I love how you always start with some theme music. You should write one of your own theme songs. It's true. That would be a fun thing to do. Those first couple tunes that I played were a couple Irish tunes. The first one is called The Maid in the Cherry Tree, and the second one is called Jenny Picking Cockles. I don't think either of those are on my website, but you can find them if you look around on the internet. All right, Beijing, Chicago. Jan says, did you work on any modal yodel this week, Baron? I have not actually played that tune since last week. Haven't played a whole lot of mandolin since last week. It's been a busy little bit of time. Been working on the recording setup. Made some lessons. I'm excited I got some new lessons that I'm looking forward to putting out. But I haven't done a whole lot of... I went to an Irish session on Thursday night. That was fun, but kind of straight ahead Irish tunes. Left Coast from Uncle Bobby. Good to see you here, as always. Make sure I'm all lined up. So yeah, ask away. Questions from anyone. It looks like we already got a couple in the chat. Happy to answer these. But no question too simple or too advanced or anything. It's all wide open here. And looking forward to getting into it. Sheldon, right off the bat, says, hi from Little Falls, Minnesota. Just learned Cherokee Shuffle and was able to play along at 1.25 speed. That's awesome. That's a good thing to do. So at the end of every one of these hangouts, we all do a tune together, and I talk about what it is the week before. And invariably, I forget what the next week is going to be, so I can't remember what this one is. I'm sure you guys will remind me when the time comes. But I usually go for, a fairly medium tempo. But if anything's ever too fast for you or too slow for you, you can always change the speed by clicking in the bottom right hand corner of the video. You can click on the gear icon and change the speed at which it plays back once the video has, you can't do it while it's live as far as I know, but you can do it after the fact, and then you can really dial it into whatever speed is most comfortable for you. JN says, currently having some trouble with double stops. Could I help you out? Yeah. What are you working on? Can you give me an example of a double stop tune or a song you're working on, and I can maybe walk you through a little bit of it? Uncle Bobby, thank you very much. Starting off with the super chat donation. I appreciate it when people can donate either through the super chat here or through my website. There's a couple ways to donate. It's totally voluntary. Everything will always be free, but donations definitely make it so I can keep doing this kind of stuff, and I always appreciate it when it comes through, so thank you, Uncle Bobby. Christopher Mallow said, what are the two songs you played at the start? The Maid in the Cherry Tree and Jenny Picking Cockles. I learned those, I can't remember what album those tunes are off. If I think of it, I will try to say them later. Recovering Bassist says, sometimes I hit accidental double stops. Yeah, you and me both. As much as it's a skill to sort of learn to widen out your right hand to get... Sometimes you don't want to hit double stops, and you gotta also work on, once you get comfortable widening your hand out to hit multiple sets of strings at one time, you then have to work on, really dialing your hand back in so you can only hit one string at a time. So, and then once you do that for a while, you'll probably need to go back and work on widening out for double stops again. It's always a kind of never-ending cycle, but you can't get worse if you keep trying. That's my motto. And the more fun you're having, the better you'll get, and the quicker it'll happen. Listen to the Mockingbird. A request from recovering bassist. I don't know that one off the top of my head. I know, was it Flat and Scruggs did that? Great with probably Paul Warren playing fiddle. Great tune, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Dave 11F says, have you ever checked out the Mike Marshall online lessons at ArtistWorks? Anyone have good results with those when you can't find a local teacher? I have not. I've seen a couple like kind of the preview lessons. I've thought about signing up in the past, but I'm usually busy enough that I know I wouldn't put full attention into it. But maybe if I get some time, I'll try to throw one of those, or try to get into some of those lessons and see what I can see. It's a great resource for sure. I know there's a lot of people on Mandolin Cafe that really have had good luck and thoughts on that, and there's forum posts and stuff. So I'd say maybe read up over there and see what people are saying. But I personally don't have any real experience myself. But there's lots of great folks out there. There's also a lot of people that do Skype lessons. I don't personally do Skype lessons, but there's a whole kind of catalog of people who give Skype lessons. Some pretty big names over on Mandolin Cafe as well. I've done those in the past, and super fun. Okay, so Jan, for a double stop example, it says he's working on Cherokee Shuffle. So one thing that I think about, and what I'd recommend kind of as a more long answer to this, is check out my double stop series on my website. It's in the Technique and Fundamentals section. My website is MandoLessons.com, for those of you who may not know that. And my name is Baron Collins Hill. I often forget to introduce myself. But there's a 4-part series on double stops over there, and I talk about a lot of this stuff. But in the key of A, one thing you can think about is having nice open drone notes to play. So in the key of A, your open A string and your open E string are great drone notes that you can play on top of your melody. So rather than going... if I just play the open A and E strings with all of those notes, etc. And that's, I think that's probably the first step in getting some double stops into your fingers, is find those drone strings that work in any key. There's a little shortcut that I use that in the key of G, you got G strings and D strings that are going to work great as drone strings. In the key of D, you have your D string and your open A string. Those will work great as drones. And in the key of A, open A and open E. Key of C, if you had a C string, you could use it, but also the open G string is a great drone in the key of C. Oops, the chat is jumping down. I love it when everybody's chatting, and I'm struggling to keep up. That's just the way I like it. Hello from Berlin, Germany. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you speed up the speed of the... oh, that's a good question. Pat says, if you speed up the speed of the live video, could you time travel into the future? I like that idea. I'll have to try it sometime. Dan from Riverside, California. Awesome. Thanks for joining. Michael's finally catching one of the lives from the UK. Thanks for joining in. Oh, I saw somebody had okay. Christopher has a $5 super chat donation. Thank you so much. Appreciate the support, and couldn't do it without that sort of thing happening. So, appreciate it. JN says, I looked at the McClung website. The McClung, so this is an armrest. I'm not sponsored by McClung or anything at this point, but they make these armrests that I really like. They're not necessities, but I personally like them. And he says he looked at the McClung armrest website, and there's so many different armrests. I'm not sure which to buy. Are there different sizes, and which would you recommend? I think, in general, I think he makes some that are the McClung, which is like kind of the arched one. I really like those. Beyond that, I think they're all about the same size and shape. Each one is made by hand, so there's slight differences. I think it's mostly down to kind of like whatever color you want or whatever wood choice you want. I actually just sent him an email about getting one for my mandola, but it's going to need like a bigger bracket, so I had to send him the measurements and stuff. But I'm looking forward to buying one of those at some point here. Yeah, I think, they're all like slightly different. I have two that are both either ebony or like, he calls it ebonized, when it, like some sort of black stain on it to make it look like ebony, because ebony is kind of an endangered resource. So people are starting to look into alternatives, which I commend. But just kind of then the two that I have are slightly different, but they're pretty much the same. And I think the only thing he needs to know in terms of size is how deep your mandolin is. If it's something, these little carpenter jack clamps are fairly they'll fit a wide variety, but it doesn't hurt to send them your measurements in case you have an extra deep or an extra narrow mandolin. All right, Krilly HD says hello, welcome, thanks for joining us. Alberto says, have you ever played a 4-string mandolin? I have. I had a mandolin. I had a Fender. I forget what the model number was. It kind of looked like a little Stratocaster. And it was an 8-string mandolin, but I actually took off half the strings and it had like a pickup in it. And I used it a lot for jazz when I was playing more jazz. I've also played some like the Mandobird electric mandolins. I also had a 5-string solid body electric with a low C, but essentially a 4-string. I don't know if I've ever played like specifically acoustic 4-string. I know that people make them. I'm sure it's a cool sound. But I've played a couple over the years, but not tons, and I can't always remember all the details of what I've played and what I haven't. Azia, apologies if I can't get your name right there, says, can you play the Galway hornpipe? First tune I learned on the mandolin. I don't know that I can remember. If I know that tune, I don't know it by that name, or I know the tune, but I don't know the name, or I don't know the tune or the name. In any case, I can't do it right now, but great request, and maybe I'll look it up for another live stream down the road, or maybe making a lesson of it. Oh, is the Galway hornpipe also Sailor's hornpipe? I can't remember. It could be a different name. Angelo, thank you very much for the super chat donation. Always appreciated. JN says, to play the Earl's Chair. Yeah, I love that tune. And I made a lesson of it recently, so it's on my website, and that also means I'm more likely to remember how it goes. I'll dive into the close-up view here. It's a key of D, but starts on a B minor chord. There it is, a little bit of the Earl's chair, great Irish reel in the key of D. That's on my website if you want to learn it. Great request, JN. Covering Bases says, how do you feel about planting the right hand pinky finger against the body while playing leads? I see some players doing it. I will zoom back in for this question. So I think I'm generally not a fan. I'll go this way a little bit. What I find is that if I'm playing without planting, I'm much more loose through my whole arm and through my wrist, and all these muscles are very loose. It's a little bit of elbow, a little bit of wrist, all that sort of thing. Whereas if I drop a pinky or a couple fingers, when I pick, you notice my elbow immediately is kind of locked into place. And that's from planting my fingers like that. And what I find is it just locks up. I can feel the tension kind of running through the muscles in my hand. And I'm not saying that's going to happen for everybody, but it's definitely what happens for me. It's not the most comfortable. I feel like I lose a lot of flexibility and a lot of range on the instrument, and a lot of some of the dynamics kind of get lost by locking down my fingers. I don't like the sound as much, and yeah, I just find myself being very tight and uncomfortable when I try to do that. And I think in general, a lot of people tighten up when they're doing that. That said, there are amazing mandolin players who do plant, so I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm just saying I don't do it, and I think I've seen a lot more people do it and use it as a crutch and sort of create a more tension than it's worth by planting their fingers there. While there are a few people who really make it work. Krilly HD says, have you ever heard of Bob Amos? He's an awesome banjo player that has taught music at camps with Byron Berline, Bill Monroe's former fiddle player. He is well known throughout New England. The name sounds vaguely familiar, but not off the top of my head. I'm better with faces than I am with names, and I'm not always that great with faces. So, if that tells you anything. Hello from Ohio. Awesome. Thanks for joining in. Bill says, I'm 65-year-old, decided to learn to play mandolin after happening upon your lessons. Any thoughts or advice? Yeah, I would say start right from the beginning if it's your first instrument, or even if it's not, even if you're a lifelong guitar player. A lot of the stuff in the beginner series is going to be repeat information, but I think, even if 1% of what's going on in the beginner series is new information to you, or a good reminder for you, it's going to be worth it. It's a lot of the beginner series is about ear training and proper technique and getting a good sound out of the instrument. And I think if you can be comfortable and create a good sound on the instrument, those are sort of like two of the biggest hurdles to jump over at first. So I'd say start right at the beginning. I start right at the beginning all the time. I'm always going back to kind of the first things I'd learned and trying to rework my basic technique and make it a little bit better. So I think there's no harm in starting there. And from there, once you're through the beginner series, I would say, follow your interests. If you can just you can browse through my fiddle tunes by, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and browse through. And if you hear something that you really like, whether or not it's beginner or intermediate, advanced, it might be easier to grab onto some of the beginner tunes at first. But in the world of fiddle tunes, beginner tunes aren't really a thing. Like, there's just some tunes that have less notes and are a little easier for our ears to pick up, but there's endless amount of stuff to do with all these tunes. So, a lot of the tunes in the beginner series, or in the beginner section, it's not like I don't play them anymore because they're beginner tunes. I do. I still play those tunes all the time, and I love them. Often more than some of the more advanced stuff. I hope that's helpful. But yeah, really kind of follow your interests. And then with the technique and fundamentals section, that's helpful if you have specific thoughts like, how do I play triplets? Or what's good right hand technique? Or how do I do cross picking? Things like that. Or triplets or closed position scales. all that stuff is useful. And if you're interested in that stuff, check it out in the technique and fundamentals section of the website. But that stuff's not as kind of musically fulfilling, at least for me, as the tune side or the song side of things are. Oh, cool, Bobby, and this is your banjo teacher. That's awesome. Oh, where am I? The chat just jumped around. Okay, Christopher says, I worked on Cherokee Shuffle myself this week and found sliding up to the fifth rather than just moving up to the open string something I had not done much, and I'm trying it with other tunes. Cool, I think maybe you mean the 7th fret, like... So there's a lot of like kind of sliding into the 7th fret on any given string instead of or in conjunction with playing that open string. Like that. Cool, yeah, it's definitely something comes in handy with a bunch of tunes and a bunch of different styles. So definitely worth your time getting comfortable with that sort of move. Recovering Bassist says, does an armrest increase your speed? Not personally. It definitely increases my comfort. I feel a little more comfortable rather than putting my arm on kind of a sharpened... It's not sharpened. I had a mandolin before this one that was really kind of uncomfortably sharp, which is how I got into using armrests. But I find having your arm on like a soft wooden thing rather than a more sharp kind of corner of binding is a little more comfortable for me, but I don't think it really affects my speed. Maybe ever so slightly, but you know, putting an armrest on your mandolin isn't gonna make you play 10 beats per minute faster kind of automatically. It might even slow you down at first because it's a slightly different arm angle that you're not as used to. But I don't think speed is really a factor. It's just more of what you're used to and kind of how dialed in your technique is that will really create your kind of speed ceiling more than anything else. Dan's Tune says, I just bought him a clung, and Doug did a color match to go with the stain. I've seen him do that. Yeah, that's cool. On the top of your Collings MT. Those are great mandolins. That's a MT Mandola back there. I really love it. Yeah, the slight lift on the arm it provides is really comfortable. That's what I think so too. That said, I've heard other people try them and be like, meh, not for me. So to each their own, but I'm a fan. Okay, so the Galway hornpipe is not the same as Sailor's hornpipe. Thank you, Asya. But I'll look. I know I've heard the name, but I can't quite come up with it at this point. Uncle Bobby says you could get strings tuned in fifths for a uke. Yeah, somebody had a resonator ukulele at Maine Fiddle Camp, which I teach at every summer. It's a great mandolin contingent there. It's not just for fiddles. But somebody had an old resonator ukulele from like the 30s that they had strung with steel strings, tuned like a mandolin. It was a really cool sound. And another friend took a baritone ukulele and put nylon strings on it and also tuned it it was actually an octave mandolin. But there's a lot of cool options out there. Greetings from Jerusalem. Thanks for joining. Catch up with the chat. I think it might have jumped on me. Nope, okay. Nelson says, watched a couple YouTubes about the circle of fifths. Is that something you use? If so, how does it help? It's a useful tool when you're thinking about theory. There's also ways you can use it to think about like 1, 4, and 5 chords in a particular key. So if you look at the circle of fifths and it says like, oh, here's G, then your 4 chord is 1 counterclockwise, and your 5 chord is 1 clockwise. So you can sort of look at it, and your 4 and 5 chords are on either side of the little wedge that your key is in. It also, some of them will show you the relative minor kind of on the inside of the circle. There used to be one on my website. I don't know if there still is. But it can be a useful tool. it's not going to make you a better musician just kind of like by looking at it, but it can help you be more kind of fluent. It's kind of like a book of grammar. It's like a thesaurus or a dictionary or a book about words. It's not going to help you speak better, but it can, like in the long run, it can, and it can make you more fluent in whatever you're trying to say by being able to understand and communicate musical ideas better. Andrew says, any classical songs you enjoy? Any plans for a classical lesson? I don't really know anything about classical music. And I was actually I used to know the Bach cello suite prelude, the first prelude for Bach's solo cello suite. Etc. But every time I play it, I know a little bit less of it. But I really want to get it back now that I've got that mandola back there, because that's actually in the key that the piece was written for, rather than just playing it on a mandolin where it comes out in the wrong key. So I really want to get that back under my fingers, and I'd love to do more classical, but I don't really know any. But there's a lot of stuff. There's a whole classical section of the forum over at Mandolin Cafe. That's a great resource for people into classical music. I'd check out over there. I know there's like drop boxes full of sheet music and stuff. Lots of great things happening over there. Uncle Bobby says, I see you have beads on your strings up by the tuners. What do they do? So I think what Uncle Bobby is talking about are these things. Got two there and two there. And what they do is if you don't have those there, I've also got them down here. If you don't have them, you're gonna get this sort of like ringing sound. But I find that can sometimes get in the way. Some people think it adds a little bit of kind of resonance to the instrument. Sometimes I've had troubles with like actual notes ringing out when I don't want them to. So I like to kind of focus the sound down by muting those. Definitely, again, a total personal preference. Some people will put like a shoelace or a piece of leather through, or other ways to dampen it. But I got a bunch of these at the hardware store and put them in all my mandolins because I like the way it kind of cleans up the sound a little bit. But totally personal preference. Cool. Jan says, I like your old-time mandolin music album. Do you have a hardcover CD version of it or just the video? So a couple of years ago, I put out a album that you can find on my website. I think it's in like the store section or something of MandoLessons.com. It's a solo old-time mandolin album. It was a lot of fun to do. There's also a video that you can watch that's kind of... I'm still on the close-up view, but... it's kind of this view of me playing all those tunes, the same cuts that are on the album. And Jan was wondering, do you have hardcover CD version? I do not. It's just digital. You can buy it on Bandcamp, and you can buy it with the video, or rent it with the video. Cool. Ted will be here soon. Always good to hear. JN says, hey Baron, what's a clever name for a bluegrass group? My answer there is what you need to do is go, I think it's on Mandolin Cafe, or if you look up like bluegrass band name generator, you can find somebody's put together, I don't know if it was Scott from Mandolin Cafe or not, somebody put together a bluegrass band name generator. That's a lot of fun to check out. Hang on half a second, I'll be right back. Hello. Sorry about that. I am back. A friend of mine stopped by, and I forgot they were coming. Cool. Let's see, catch up. Oh yeah, so bluegrass band name generator. Kevin says, any advice for us on us left-handers who play right-handed? Okay on fretboard, but find picking and strumming a bit stiff. I don't have any personal experience with that because I'm right-handed. But I know there's a lot of people that are left-handed or like ambidextrous that play right-handed. I think Chris Thiele writes lefty but plays righty, so it can be done. And yeah, it's I think like just keep at it, and all that stuff will come more natural. And I think something that I do sometimes just to sort of remind myself that this is that I am actually making progress. And I made a lesson on this. But if you take your mandolin, take the strap off if you're playing it, and flip it around and try to play it upside down from where you've been practicing and like your normal way of playing, it's intensely hard to play. It's all of your technique goes out the window, and it's really hard to play. And it's just a good reminder that something can feel so comfortable this way, but the first time you ever picked up a fretted instrument is the same idea. That's sort of what it felt like to pick up the instrument for the first time. So just keep at it, and I think that'll all come together. Cool. Talking about McClung armrests. Let's see. Let's see. The chat just jumped on me. I gotta find my place again. All right, Ted's here from Vermont. Good to see ya. Simon's got a question that I get a lot. Do you pick one string at a time, or do you hit both strings at the same time? As my teacher asks me to do, but I find it difficult. That's a good question. I think my main answer is that I don't think about it. I imagine that I am hitting both strings, but it's hard to tell sometimes. Like, let me zoom in. Oops. To this view. Get this at kind of like this angle. So, one thing you can do to practice hitting both sets of strings is do what's called a rest stroke, so I'm on the D strings, my pick is on the D strings, and I just go through the strings, and the pick will stop on the top of the A strings without actually playing the A strings. I should do a lesson on this. So that's hitting both strings, I assume. But it's really hard to tell, and so this is hitting one string, and this is hitting both. It's not a huge difference, really. So I think, the main thing to think about is follow through. The fact, that you're not like hitting a string and kind of mincing away from it. You really want to like have your arm just like a golf swing. Not that I play golf, but what I hear about golf, and it seems kind of natural, is you take a swing, and you hit the ball here. It doesn't make sense to like swing through and hit it and then stop there. You're going to swing through and let the weight of the head of the golf club, that's the word I was looking for, continue through. Same thing with like tennis. A lot of sports, there's a certain amount of like follow through, and it's the same idea on a mandolin. You don't want to like hit that string and stop and lock up. It's all about being nice and fluid and relaxed, and letting sort of the physics of your arm take over a little bit. Cool. Curly says just learned Golden Slippers on the banjo. It's a great tune. Maybe I'll play it a little bit. Hey, Golden Slippers jam along to... Well, yeah, definitely. I feel like maybe that's what we talked about last week, or maybe have we already done that one? I don't know if Denise is here, but she usually has a better sense of this stuff than I do. But if not, I will look it up at some point. Maybe somebody can remind me what this week's jam tune is. Recovering Basis says I hold my arm a bit lower, like against the bridge, kind of. Don't know exactly what you mean, like... I don't know if you mean this sort of lower, or this sort of lower, but... I think as long as you're not planting anything, you're probably in good shape. And even if you are planting, it could be working for you. Yellow Rose Farms says, can you play Billy in the Low Ground? Sure, I'll play a little Billy in the Low Ground. Michael, thank you so much for the super chat donation. I appreciate it. Wow, this chat's really flying by. That's what I like to see. JN says you should bust out a little octave mandolin or tenor guitar. Yeah, I could try to do that. I've got enough time here. These things really fly by. Angelo says, how does it work to ground a band? I don't know if you mean to like start a band or to be like a fundamental like rhythm playing mandolin machine in a band. Happy to try to answer your question, but I don't entirely know what you mean. But by all means, try again and I will do my best to answer. JN says, how do you tie on your strap? That's another question I get a lot. What I'm doing here is I just have like a regular old strap. You can find this strap, some people, you just use like I've used shoelaces in the past. Doesn't really matter. But ultimately, I've got this strap in the description of this video. If you click on my kit, where you can see all my gear and find it online, I get a little commission from Amazon at no cost to you, which again helps me run the site. But so what I've got going on here is the strap comes down and then it's just on a little loop of string. It's actually a shoelace. And I don't know if there's a good way to show this really, but what it's doing is it's kind of going underneath the fretboard extension and then around the back of the instrument. So it just kind of loops around like that. And then I've got it on the tailpiece down here. And some people will put it up here behind the bridge. Behind the nut. I've done that in the past. But ultimately I've kind of settled on it being around underneath the extension. Not all mandolins can do that, like my old Gibson mandolin back there. I don't know if you... Oops. Let's go back here. On that one, it doesn't have a raised fingerboard, so I actually have it tied around the headstock because that's the only place to put it. Oh no, Crilly says my banjo strap just broke. Hope it didn't drop your banjo to the floor. Cool. Greg, I think, has also bought my Old Time Mandolin album that's on my site. I appreciate it. Thank you. I feel like I missed a super chat. Oh, no, I did. A recovering bassist. Thank you for the super chat. I saw it and then my chat jumps around and I don't want to miss any of these things. Catch up. Mando Bando. So, we got a bunch of lefties in the crowd. That's great. That's a great question for Mandolin Cafe. I'm sure there's a lot of lefties over there that can talk about it and have some insight onto that sort of stuff. Cool. Curly kept Ted on the right track by making him switch to right hand. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I've definitely picked up some instruments. I've tried to learn to play English concertina at one point, and the first 2 weeks that I had it, I was playing it upside down and had no idea. And I was like, this seems a little awkward. And then somebody was finally like, oh yeah, you're playing it upside down. I was like, oh, okay. Switch it around. So it's curious what comes natural to some and others. I'm sure if Ted had continued playing left-handed, probably would be a great left-handed mandolin player or uke player. Yeah, so that's something that I hear a lot of people say is, so Chris says my dad played guitar since he was a kid and he plays lefty, and he told me many times he wishes he had learned to play normal or right-handed. Yeah, that's something that I kind of hear. I think it's probably, I don't have any experience, but I can imagine it being a case of just, kind of watching other people, but seeing everything kind of backwards, and, there's not as much, instructional material for left-handed people, and there's not as many instrument options for left-handed people. You have to get instruments converted or kind of use whatever left-handed models are available. All that sort of stuff can make things a little difficult. Cool. And then Peggy is actually talking about converting a guitar right now. Flip my strings, nut, and bridge to play left-handed, and have never had a problem for the last 40 years. That's great. You know, I am a very right-handed person, so I can imagine that if you're very left-handed, trying to play right-handed is not going to feel that great. Just as me trying to play left-handed doesn't feel that great. Jan says, you ever find anything out about Yarmouth Reel? I have not gotten into that one. Oh yeah, Cluck Old Hen is the tune this week. Maybe we should get into that, because it's getting towards the third quarter of this week's live stream. Cool. You're not... Recovering basis is not planting. Glad to hear it. Forearm kind of sits on the bridge below where your armrest is. Oh, okay. So yeah, you're doing this. This is... Mike Compton actually plays like this. And gets a great sound out of the instrument. If you find that uncomfortable, the Doug Edwards, who makes the McClung armrests, actually makes over the tailpiece ones for people who play down there. But also maybe you find it more comfortable just to kind of have your arm on it. And he also makes some that are like half over the tailpiece. Lots of options out there. New Regal 86 says, who made this mandolin? This mandolin was made by Tom Ellis down in Austin, Texas. It's about 10 years old. I bought it in 2009 when it was new and put a lot of hours and miles onto it. And I guess it's going to turn 10 years old next year. Pat says, when I switch from melody to chords in a song, the pick often migrates in my hand. Thoughts? I think a little bit of pick migration isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think if you're really clamped down on your pick and it never moves, that's not great. Because it's going to be adding tension in order to like squeeze your hand really hard. You're tensing up a lot of muscles through your whole arm. So my pick definitely floats around in my hand a little bit. I would say the more time you spend and the more comfortable you get with the pick in your hands, the pick will float around, but it will never kind of get away from where you want it to be. So the pick definitely floats around in my hand as I play. I just always kind of am adjusting it a little bit to keep it where I want it to be. And I think that'll happen for you as well. Wow, even more left-handed folks. Cool. Dan's Tune says, I'm also lefty, but have always played stringed instruments right-handed. JN says, any tips for performing? You just got to do it a lot. You know, I am not a great performer. It's still something that, you know, I get a little, it's funny because I can sit here and talk to as many people as I want, but on stage I definitely get a little more locked up, and I used to get much more. You know, I think it's just like learning to play an instrument, learning to be on stage. You know, it's going to be really uncomfortable the first bunch of times that you do it, and it's not going to go as well as you'd planned. But just keep doing it and getting yourself out there. Go to open mics. Just kind of immerse yourself in being on stage, and you'll get a lot more comfortable. You know that a lot of the people that are listening to you are not musicians. And, you know, even if you just sat up there and went, you know, that's more than they know how to do, and they're just enjoying the sound that you're creating. So, yeah, do it a lot, and try not to beat yourself up about it too much when things don't go as planned, because that's bound to happen, and it happens to everybody. And being comfortable on stage is often just doesn't come naturally to people, but can definitely be learned by just doing it more and more. Great question, though. Jan says, have you ever heard of the Wisman family? I have not, but I've got to check them out. Crilly's got to go. Good to see you. Have a great weekend, and see you next time. Andrew, thank you so much for the Super Chat donation. Recovering Basis says, I don't find it uncomfortable, just jealous of all the armrest chatter. Yeah. I mean, that's the nice thing, is if you don't need an armrest, that's $50. You know, you can have a nice dinner, or pay your bills, or like whatever it is that us armrest using folks are missing out on. Yep. Christopher says, nothing like playing with a group. Do it as often as you can. Totally. You know, it's more like on or off stage, you know, playing with other people often is more fun than just playing on your own. And sometimes those groups end up becoming bands, or like other groups that end up getting some kind of stage or radio time, things like that, and it all builds on itself. You know, if you're into contra dance music, often there's dances that'll let kind of people sit in the background, or there'll be all-comer bands and dances where the band is just made up of community members. That sort of stuff is great, and take those opportunities whenever they're there. Old time sessions, bluegrass sessions, Irish sessions, find whatever's nearest and just get out there and play. Might not even be your 100% cup of tea. You know, maybe you really want to play old time music, but all you have is an Irish session. Maybe go there and, you know, play the Irish, or listen to Irish music, you know, learn a couple Irish tunes, see if you take to it. And if not, you know, you'll at least meet some musicians and be like, hey, do you know where any like old time musicians are? And probably some of them are going to be old time musicians. There's a lot of crossover, at least in the States. That's good stuff. Let's see. Arm Restless String Band. I like that, Uncle Bobby. Oh, you broke a mandolin. Yellow Rose broke a mandolin string in my last live stream. Hansa says, do you have any songs to practice tremolo picking? That's a good question. I would say slow songs, so check out the waltzes on my website, or songs like, let's see, what is that one that's always in my head? I can never remember what the name of this song is. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Somebody will probably be able to tell me what that tune is. Or Danny Boy, also known as Londonderry Air. That's a great one. Any slow song that's got long notes in it is going to be great for a Skyboat song. Thank you, Denise. Welcome, Denise. Thanks for joining us. You're just in time for us to do this week's tune, which is Cluck Old Hen. Not that I remembered, but I had to ask people earlier, and people kept me in line. All right, everybody knows it's Skyboat song. That's great. I love that tune. I can just never remember the name of it. So, you know, take those slow songs with lots of... And, you know, really, when you're working on tremolo, just do it as much as possible. It might not really fit everywhere, but the more you do it, even if it doesn't fit, it's time put into that physical practice. So see if you can turn the Skyboat song into all tremolo. And, you know, ultimately, you might want to do something more like... You know, a little bit of single picking, a little bit of tremolo. But if you do a lot of tremolo, it's going to work out a lot of the kinks and sort of do a lot of the hard work of figuring out where, like, how to switch strings, how to move around on a single string, by just playing whole tunes and then kind of toning that back a little bit and doing a little bit of single melody, a little bit of tremolo. So let's play a little bit of Cluck Old Hen. So get your mandolin out and tuned up. This is the key of A, and we'll jump into it. I've got a couple questions while people get their instruments out. Oh yeah, Wayfaring Stranger is another great example. Covering Bass says, how many of you are singers as well? Yep, always fun to sing. Even if you don't think of yourself as a singer, just trying. I don't really think of myself as a singer, but you can't get worse if you keep trying. So just do it. Match the pitch with your voice or with your mandolin. So da 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 da. That sort of exercise is great because the mandolin's going to be in tune, and you can match the pitch of your voice to the mandolin. Is tremolo good on an octave? I do it less on an octave, but yeah, you can totally do it. I really like the sustain that you get out of an octave mandolin. Often I'll use tremolo to kind of cover up the lack of sustain that a mandolin has. Versus, it dies away fairly quickly on a mandolin. But on longer scale length instruments, you get more sustain. So sometimes I'll play less tremolo because you've got more sustain, but it totally works on long scale instruments as well. Okay, so let's see. Beat Seed says, I have a student who's struggling to stay in the down-up rhythm. He turns it around according to what strings he's playing on and to what strings he's going. It looks totally fluid when he does it. Yeah, and it totally. I was the same way. A lot of people are the same way, I think there's something to be said for getting that down-up pattern into your right hand. Let me get your second half of the question. Is it helpful to work on the proper down-up order, or do it if the way it comes naturally? I think it's important to work on that down-up pattern. It often doesn't come naturally, but what happens is if you look at my right hand when I play a tune, my right hand's really just doing this. It becomes a little motor that I have a lot more expressive kind of dynamics with, because you can really get dynamics into your rhythm rather than like kind of, it can be a little more staggered if your pick is getting turned around. So you can really get that kind of underlying wooga chugga, wooga chugga, wooga chugga. That's really hard to get if your right hand is constantly kind of doing double ups and double downs and things like that. New Regal says, so what? Maybe I'll do two more questions, and then I will jump into Cluck Old Hen. Scarecrow says, Johnny Comes Marching Home. Can that be played on the mandolin? I'm sure it can. I don't know it off the top of my head. And New Regal says, which octave mandolin scale length has the least amount of tension on the strings, 19 or 23 inch? I want to buy one, but I do not want to get a finger shredder. So if you're using the same gauge strings, the 19-inch scale length is going to have less tension, but it really depends more on the string tension than or like the string gauge that is going to define the tension just as much as the scale length is. So if you have light gauge strings on a 19-inch scale instrument, it's going to have more, it's going to be easier to play than medium gauge strings on a 19-inch. Or if you have light gauge strings on a 23-inch scale and medium on a 19, that might be closer in terms of kind of string tension. So I think whichever you end up getting, if the string tension's too high, just try to find some lighter gauge strings. You can get bulk strings online, like single strings, and play around with it. That's what I do with a lot of my like octave mandolin and mandolin family instruments, is build my own sets, of strings to really dial in the tension that I'm looking for. All right, so let's play a little bit of Cluck Old Hen, key A. We'll jump into it. So the way this works, I won't play it too fast, and I'll play it through once. You can play the chords while I'm playing the melody. Then we can switch. I'll play the melody, or I'll play the chords, you play the melody, back and forth. I can play some harmony, you guys play some harmony. If you're just working on the tune, try to get the tune under your fingers. If you've been playing this tune for years, see if you can add in some improvisation or double stops, things like that, harmony lines. Have fun with it. Make it challenging for yourself wherever you're at with the tune. And let's go for it. So, Cluck Old Hen. Key of A starts in the E string. 1, 2, 3, 4. I might have miscounted this, but we'll do one more B. Take it. B part. B2. Play melody, play chords. You take it. B. Going out. Cool. Those are always fun. That means it's time to pick next week's tune. So put some suggestions out there. I saw a Golden Slippers suggestion earlier. That could be a fun one. Unless we already did that one, I can't remember. The Wren, that's a great choice as well. Let a couple things roll in here and see what pops up, but looks like we got a good option somewhere in here already. So if you got suggestions, throw them out. If we can't get to yours this week, we will jump on it next week. So that song was called Cluck Old Hen. It's on my website. It's a great old time tune and song. It's got some great words. Check it out. Maybe I'll play one of those. I'll play Billy in the Low Ground while you guys send in your requests for next week, and then we will have to say adieu. But a little bit of Billy in the Low Ground. Before that, I'll go into the close screen here. Alright, there's a little bit of Billy in the Low Ground. Looks like maybe by popular demand we've got Golden Slippers, a great tune in the key of G. It's on my website if you want to learn it. If you already know it, try to maybe work a little bit this week on some improvisation or adding some double stops into that sort of thing. And yeah, just have fun with it. Challenge yourself to up your Golden Slippers game for next week's play along. That's gonna all right, really like those mandolin slides. Me too. A lot of fun. Just something you could probably add into Golden Slippers too. But yeah. Oh, and the bends are fun too. Yeah. I like that stuff. It's fun. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming, spending an hour on your Saturday, hanging out with a bunch of other mandolin enthusiasts. If you're not subscribed already, there's new subscribes. So you can follow these live events most Saturdays at noon Eastern Standard, and new lessons sometime during the week, usually on Thursdays. And yeah, have a great weekend. Great to see you all. Great to have some new faces. Great to see some old faces. And see you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all the Super Chat donations. Bye-bye.